Hello, I'm Summerland Mayor Doug Holmes. Welcome to the third episode of the Mayor's Podcast. Today we're going to talk about public transit. One of Council's priorities is to build an adaptable and affordable community. Included in this priority is to pilot free bus fare for all Summerland residents on the Route 30 bus that goes into Penticton. It was decided at our last council meeting on April 3rd that the trial will start this April 22nd, which is Earth Day, and it'll run for 1 year. So from Earth Day 2023 to Earth Day 2024, any resident of Summerland can hop on the number 30 bus, show the bus driver their ID, like a driver's license, Service BC card, anything with their address on it, and they can ride the bus for free. I'll speak further about free bus fare in a moment, but first I'd like to welcome Erin Sparks, who is a senior transit planner for BC Transit. Erin, thank you for joining us today.
Hello, Doug. Thank you for having me.
So Summerland has two bus routes, Route 30 that goes between Summerland and Penticton, and Route 70 that goes between Penticton and Kelowna and stops in Summerland. Route 30 is a partnership between BC Transit and the District of Summerland, while Route 70 is a partnership between BC Transit and the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen. Erin, could you explain how these partnership models work and how the two routes have taken shape over the years?
Absolutely. So BC Transit delivers its service across the province in partnership with local governments. So the District of Summerland is one of our partners for the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system. And we operate what's known as a shared services model. So funding for transit is provided by both the local government and the province, which means really that we're able to deliver transit service in communities of all different sizes. So places like Victoria, but also places like Summerland, places like Clearwater, these sort of smaller communities that may not have the ability to fund transit entirely on their own. And then on the ground, the buses are operated by an operating company that BC Transit contracts out to. So in South Okanagan-Similkameen, we work with Barrie and Smith, and the local government makes the final decisions on fares, on the routing, and on the service levels based off of guidance provided by BC Transit. In terms of the specific routes you mentioned, so we have Route 70, which operates between Kelowna and Penticton with stops in Summerland. And in January of 2021, we introduced two additional midday trips Tuesday through Friday, as well as added in some service to Peachland on this route. And then for the Route 30 in January of 2022, we added Saturday service as well as two more weekday trips. So again, bringing up that level of service a little bit. In terms of transit need and land use and density, when we're looking at where we sort of see the need for transit, we look at things like land use, we look at density, we look at demographics, and the census is a really great place for that information. So we know that the South Okanagan is growing, of course, and that a lot of the people who are living there are younger or 65 plus. So they're in that sort of group of people that really we tend to associate with higher rates of transit ridership. And we also know that about half of the commutes in the South Okanagan-Similkameen are 15 minutes or less, which is really important information because it means that with really good transit, we can convert some of those trips to trips on the bus. So you don't necessarily have to drive your car down to Penticton. You can hop on the bus. In terms of things like ridership, for the South Okanagan-Similkameen, we see a lot of the ridership generated on our local Penticton routes, which makes sense kind of given the density, the older demographics. We have ridership generators like Okanagan College and the hospital, that kind of thing. But then we also have these routes outside that connect people in communities like Summerland to Penticton, as well as Okanagan Falls, Osoyoos, that kind of thing. In terms of ridership, the 30 and the 70 were certainly impacted by COVID. We know that transit systems across the world were impacted by COVID, but we've also seen ridership continue to recover. And so while the routes 30 and 70 don't necessarily have the same ridership as some of the local Penticton routes, we know that they provide really critical service between communities and help connect riders to jobs, to education, shopping, medical appointments, all those really important things that the bus can help you do.
Yeah, as people living in Summerland really have no choice but to travel into Penticton or Kelowna to access basic services and activities. I wish more of those services were available in Summerland, but the reality is more and more we're seeing um, regional services being concentrated in Penticton, and that's not really a trend we're going to see change anytime soon, I don't think. And the reality is not everybody has a car. When we talk about affordability, we usually think in terms of housing and the cost of food, but transportation affordability is equally important. Well, free bus fares won't necessarily pull low-income people out of poverty. It will keep money in their pockets, and it will ensure everyone can travel when they need to. Because, I think really mobility is a right. When you remove fares, it says to people that you have a right to get around regardless of your means. So, and I see transit as a public good, very much like libraries and schools. And they're services that some people use more than others, but everyone pays into them for the benefit of all society. And so that's kind of the thinking behind making Route 30 a free ride for all residents of Summerland. As well, of course, if we're able to make the bus up, as you were mentioned, Darren, if we're able to make the bus a preferred option for even car owners, then we can reduce our energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. I should say that our council, when we made the decision on free bus fares, wasn't in full agreement. There are concerns about the loss of revenue that we currently receive from those fares, which amounts to about $20,000 a year. I think those are valid concerns, but for most public transit systems, the collected fares amount to about 10% of the total revenue. Is that about right? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right.
And Route 30 is no exception. And in fact, it's even less than 10% for us. And it costs, and it also costs money to distribute tickets and collect fares. And so I think we might be the first community in BC to offer free bus fares on a specific route. And though we're not, we're not doing anything too crazy here. It's been done in other places in Europe, in the United States, Australia, as well as it's been, we've seen it in Halifax and Calgary here in Canada. And I think, from what I've read, just about everywhere it's been tried, it's resulted in an increase in ridership. What they found in these other places is that while most people can afford to ride the bus, they don't, because nobody carries around a bus ticket or exact change, and people can't be bothered messing around with coins. So what we're doing is just saying, just show the bus driver your ID. And a year from now, if the pilot is successful and council wants to continue with the free fares, we'll be able to transfer it all and formalize it and transfer it to the new electronic bus card that BC Transit is introducing.
Yeah, so that's a great opportunity to bring up UMO, which is our electronic fare payment technology that we're looking to roll out in late 2023. So we're going to be starting with a mobile app as well as a reloadable fare card. But in the future, we'll move towards accepting credit cards and debit cards, so you can just tap your card when you get on the bus. And yeah, like you said, no need to mess around with a pocket full of change if that's not how you want to travel. But I should say that cash will still be accepted on board the buses, because we recognize that is still how some people will prefer to pay their fares, and we don't want to take that option away from them. But really the goal here with UMO is to make riding the bus easier, make getting on board just a straightforward experience, so you don't really even have to think about too much. You can just tap your fare, tap your card, and you're on your way. Which really kind of aligns with the overall vision that we have for transit in the South Okanagan-Similkameen, where we see transit being really the preferred choice. So it's comfortable, it's accessible, it's safe, it's convenient. So UMO will definitely help make that service more convenient, which really aligns with what we've heard from Summerland residents, is that they want a convenient bus service in their community.
Yeah, so speaking of convenience, I certainly know the introduction of the Saturday service last year has been well received, and as has the 2 additional weekday trips. So in the next couple of years, using our same bus, the Summerland's bus, we should be able to introduce a few rounds on Sundays as well, a few round trips. And in the longer term, we could probably see a Friday and Saturday night service to Penticton running to 10 p.m. I know there's been a lot of interest in developing a local service, so a bus that runs around different parts of Summerland. Erin, how would that work?
Yeah, so we recently wrapped up our Transit Future Action Plan for the South Okanagan-Similkameen Transit System. And the purpose of this plan is really to outline the path forward for transit in Summerland and Penticton and all of the communities within that system. It outlines all of our different priorities for service moving forward. And one of the things we saw really strong support for during public engagement was this local service for Summerland, particularly operating between downtown, Lower Town, and then Trout Creek, which I think really makes a lot of sense if you look at kind of the geography. Like you have the highway, you have some pretty steep hills, and so it can make travel challenging. And so I think it makes sense that those are the areas of Summerland that people said, let's get a local bus running around. We have service to Trout Creek already just with Route 30, but it's intermittent. It's not on every trip. So this local service would provide kind of consistent connections to that part of Summerland to downtown, and then as well, of course, to Lower Town. The plan would be to introduce this initially Monday through Saturday to begin with. Typically what we do when we introduce new services is that we start with sort of a base level, and then we add on layers over time. So starting with Monday through Saturday, build over time by adding Sunday service, and then moving forward into the future, looking at later evening service on Fridays and Saturdays, so people can go out to dinner, go out to, to the bar, do whatever they want to do, and then get home on the bus. It's really just about adding in more layers of service to Summerland. So in addition to the Route 30 and the service that provides to Penticton and back, we have now with local service the ability to take the bus to the beach, to the grocery store, to work, wherever it is that you're looking to go. And we would, I guess the other thing to mention here is that during engagement, we didn't present specific routing for this local service. So we would be looking at doing a little bit of additional engagement before we implement the service, just to say, here's what we heard during engagement. We heard that you wanted service between downtown, Lower Town, and Trout Creek. Does this route make sense to you? Does this path look good to you? Will it get you to where you want to go? And then we would look at implementing the service sometime in the next 3 years. Again, always contingent on provincial funding, just because that's how transit service gets funded through the BC Transit model.
Yeah, funding, of course, has to be determined at the local level too, I guess. And yeah, I know those steep hills that you speak of very well. And connecting the community is another council priority, actually, and it says in our OCP, our official community plan, and several of our master plans, it's that Summerland has a dispersed population. And physically connecting the community is a challenge, but it's also important that we do to bring that cohesion to the community and make us one community. So many of our neighborhoods, like Trout Creek, as you mentioned, and Lower Town, are separated from much of the community, and they lack amenities. So people need to get into their cars and drive into town, or to drive down to the beach or wherever they want to go. So yeah, I can see why there's interest in having a local service, and certainly people have talked to me about, why can't we get the bus up Beach Orchard or whatever. So that's great. It's something to look forward to. And so what are the next steps, Erin? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so the next steps are really to receive endorsement from our local partners on the final Transit Future Action Plan. And then we can move forward with implementing all of the priorities that are within that plan. So we will work, as BC Transit, will work with local government staff to identify priorities on a 3-year rolling basis. And then we present these priorities to local boards or councils for approval. And then once we have that approval, we move forward with requesting provincial funding to fund the provincial share of the cost for that service. like with Summerland Local Service and sometimes with other priorities, we'll do some additional public engagement just to make sure that the priorities that we've identified align with community need and make sense for Summerland, for example, at that time. And then we would proceed with requesting provincial funding, because we know that transit is never fixed. It's always evolving, it's always developing. And so we want to make sure that we're hearing people correctly and that we're putting service on the road that corresponds with the needs of our local partners and with the needs of their communities. Because yeah, we can put together a plan, and then we always need to follow up and just make sure that we're hearing people correctly and that the buses are going where people need them to go.
Well, you know, I really like the direction our buses are going, if I can use that pun. And you know, our service here is great. The buses always run on time. The buses are clean. The bus drivers are awesome. They're really friendly. They provide great service. And you know, I really like the I think the future looks pretty bright for public transit in Summerland. So thank you, Erin, for joining me today to talk about this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was great to chat.
Thanks. That was Erin Sparks, Senior Transit Planner for BC Transit. For more information on our local and regional public transit system, including bus route maps and schedules, visit the BC Transit website at www.bctransit.com. I am Summerland Mayor Doug Holmes, and you have been listening to the Mayor's Podcast. Thank you for tuning in.